and welcome back to HVAC Talk, Let's Be Real. My name's Renee, I'm one of the owners of LCS.
I'm Gretchen, I work here in the office.
And I'm Mark, service manager.
Okay, so today we are going to talk to you about electric HVAC systems, otherwise known as air handlers and heat pumps, or an electric furnace and a heat pump. So there's often a lot of questions about them, and I've got with me our homeowner who had one. She's recently moved, so she doesn't anymore, but she lived with an electric furnace and a heat pump for many, many years. And we've also got Mark, who also has a full electric system and is our technician who knows the most about air handlers and heat pumps. So we're going to do a little panel discussion today about those and what it's like to live with a full electric system. So Gretchen, let's start here. First of all, you have a heat pump, not an air conditioner.
Correct.
What does that mean?
It means that it works in both heating and cooling modes.
Okay, excellent. So how do you know if it's heating?
There's warm air coming out of the vents. And my thermostat says that the heat is on.
Okay, so when the thermostat just says that the heat is on, does that mean that the heat pump is on or that the electric furnace is on?
The heat pump.
Okay, so the heat pump is running. Now, Mark, give us a little information about how long that heat pump will run for. Is it, it could be 50 degrees outside, it could be 20 degrees outside.
Well, if it's 50 degrees outside, the heat pump should be able to take care of heating the structure by itself. There's some auxiliary heating in the electric furnace that actually helps the heat pump make that set point temperature to where when it gets cooler outside, it will kick in automatically based on the control setup, and it'll just show auxiliary heating, and the heat pump outside should be running as well.
Okay, so what you're saying is the heat pump and the electric furnace, so what's outside and what's inside, could be running at the same time.
Correct.
Okay, so Gretchen, did you ever see that auxiliary on your thermostat?
I sure did.
Okay, so let's touch on thermostats for just a minute. Thermostats were not always as smart as what they are right now. So homeowners are seeing a lot more information about how their system runs than what they used to. Mm-hmm. So on an old thermostat, remember the Mercury ones, or it's like dial-up internet, dial-up thermostat or whatever. But on those, you could either see that the system was on or it was off. It was heating or it was cooling, and that was it. So Gretchen, when you saw auxiliary, as a homeowner, what does that mean to you?
That means money, first off.
Okay.
And that it is helping the heat pump outside. It means it's bringing in warmer heat than what the outside unit could produce.
Okay, so how cold does it have to get outside for the air handler, that electric furnace, to run at the same time, to run in auxiliary at the same time as a heat pump?
It just depends on your setup as far as your home goes. If you've been opening and closing doors a lot, you'll see it come on at 50 degrees sometimes.
Okay.
If you're just, shut in for the evening or whatever, and it gets down to 30 degrees, 20 degrees outside, there's a possibility that it will kick on by itself. Now, if you go over and raise your temperature on your thermostat more than a degree or two, it'll kick the auxiliary on to help get to that temperature quicker.
Okay. So, Gretchen, you said money a minute ago. Okay. So what did you mean by that? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I just, as a homeowner, noticed that when my auxiliary heat ran more than just my normal heat, that my electric bill would be a little bit more than when it was just the normal heat.
Okay.
Heat pump.
Okay. Now, Mark, is that because you've got two units running? Is it because one's more efficient than the other? Why would her electric bills be higher if auxiliary was on?
Well, a heat pump is very efficient as far as dollar for dollar. The dollar of heat goes in. It's almost always a dollar of heat coming out of that heat pump. When you start going to electric heat, it is also a dollar for dollar going in and out, but it takes 7 to 10 amps to run a standard heat pump these days. Mm-hmm. For 5 kilowatts of heat, which is approximately 14,000 BTUs. Or it gets technical, but in order for it to feel warmer, it's a lot of heat and it's a lot more amperage, where one 5 kilowatt strip will cost or will use 20 amps.
Oh my gosh.
Versus the 7 to 10 of your heat pump.
Okay. And so is an air handler usually running on only 5 kilowatts?
No, it depends on the size of the home and the needs of the system.
Okay, so say you have a home that's 2,500 square feet.
Okay.
It's going to be significantly more than just that 5
Correct.
kilowatts.
It'll probably be 15 kilowatts.
Okay, so think about that. It's 20 for every 5, right?
Correct. So
approximately.
you'll be pulling 60 amps if your 15 kilowatts is going versus the 7 to 10.
Okay, that the heat pump is. Hence the high utility bill when you get that bill, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about emergency. So with electric systems, you have that auxiliary, which we just talked about. Now, before we go there, let me ask one more question, Gretchen. If your auxiliary is on, does that mean that your heat pump's not working?
No, it still runs.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
or it should be.
Okay, so just to clarify that means your system's running normally, right?
Correct.
Some people will think that if they see that auxiliary heat on and know that indoor furnace, the electric furnace, the air handler is running, then something's wrong with the heat pump. If the auxiliary's on, it's working as it should. It just means the heat pump can't keep up by itself, so that extra furnace comes in to supplement, basically. Okay, so what's emergency then?
Emergency is a setting on your thermostat. You know, when you go to change it from heating to cool, you'll see heat, cool, off, and emergency heat, which is just like auxiliary heat, but it is a setting on your thermostat you actually have to turn it to most of the time
Okay, so why would you ever do that?
if your heat pump isn't working.
Aha, okay. So if your heat pump's not working, and you would discover that because it would start to get cool in your house, yes. So you would discover that and say, okay, I've got a problem with my heat pump, or, maybe you've noticed iced out there. The heat pump's iced over, you've got an issue. You can actually change the setting in your thermostat and just lock out the heat pump, basically, so it's useless now.
Yep.
And that means that your backup electric, which is your auxiliary or whatever you want to call it, it's running by itself.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Now, that I assume, based on what Mark was just talking about, would be really expensive.
Yeah, it can.
Okay. Okay.
Like during the polar vortex, I'm sure everyone's about to get their bills from that. It's probably going to be higher than normal.
Okay. Okay.
It is.
It is. Yes. Mark just confirmed. Yeah.
Mark's already gotten his bill, and it is. He can confirm.
Okay. So, Mark, would you ever suggest anybody to, unless they know there's a problem with their heat pump, would you ever suggest anybody turn their system into emergency?
If the temperatures get below 0 and you know it's going to be below 0, in order to maintain the temperature in your home, that is the only time that I say turn it to emergency, because it's designed to run above that. That's extreme.
Yeah.
And you could have your low pressure switch trip in your heat pump and not know it, and then when the weather gets normal again, it doesn't want to do what it's supposed to do, and you'll be running all electric, but it'll just show auxiliary because you have a lockout because it was so cold outside.
So if that would happen, would you even realize then that the heat pump's not working until you get like your utility bill or something?
Probably not.
Okay, surprise! Heat pump's not working because your bill's really expensive. So
if you're like into your system and you notice that it's saying auxiliary a lot, first thing you want to do is when it is running and it says auxiliary on it is go out and see if your heat pump is actually running. Because if it isn't, then there's probably been some sort of I guess you'd call it an anomaly that's kicked one of either the high pressure or the low pressure lockout because of these extreme temperatures.
Okay, and so you are talking extreme, right? Like what we just came out of,
stuff, yes.
0, below 0, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. Okay,
Yes.
Now one more question, and then we're going to move on to filters because that's something that I know you've talked about a lot.
Yes, it's my favorite.
With the I just lost my train of thought. Let's go to filters. We'll come back to that. All right, so with filters, Gretchen, I know you said that sometimes you've had to change your filter, every couple of months, but sometimes you'd have to change it every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
How does a homeowner know how often to check their filter if it's so up and down like that?
Well, when your system's running a lot, like with the polar vortex, you have to think all the air that's coming through it is more than normal because your system's running more than normal. So I definitely would know to change or to check my filter when my system's running like constantly, like it was during the polar vortex. It was running constantly. Another way that I always knew was if my thermostat was trailing by a degree or two. That was always my reminder. My filter probably needs change. And I was right most of the time.
Okay.
So yeah.
So you've got it set on 70. It's holding at 67, 68.
Yeah.
Okay. Go check it and see if it's the filter.
Yeah. And
Okay.
it almost always was.
So is the only time that you would have to check it, every couple of weeks when it's super, super cold, or does the same apply when it's really hot?
Same applies. So really, when your system is running more than normal,
Okay.
there's more air coming through it, which means more dust, more debris, more nastiness.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you just need to change it more often than you would say in March or April when
Okay.
it's super mild out and your system's not running as often.
Okay. Mark, is there anything that you'd like to add as far as filter changes with heat pump and air handler systems?
I'd look just. Travis loves to refer to the oil change deal, where you're
okay.
talking about runtime versus actual days. If you drive your car for 3,000 miles in a week and you just change your oil before that 3,000 mile drive, do you still have that 3 months to wait for it? Nope.
No.
Another thing that we've been noticing this year, and if people have portable humidifiers versus whole home humidifiers, we found that for some reason that we can't scientifically, or we don't have any data to back it up.
We don't have a study to show you,
These
but
portable
our
humidifiers seem to
experience.
be clogging up these pleated filters more often this year. And I don't know if it's because the minerals don't have anything to dissolve on, but except for that filter, or I don't know. But if you
Okay.
have a portable humidifier, check your filter every week.
Okay. Now, a couple of other factors besides temperature and how often your system runs. If you live next to an open field, if you live on a farm, if you live in an area that's got a lot of construction going on, paving, things like that.
Or all the above. like
Or
I
all the
did.
above, yes. Then
Or if you're remodeling.
Oh, that's a good
Yes.
one, yes. Especially drywall. Oh, that
Drywall
drywall does plug up your system like that. So those are all great examples of reasons that you might have to check your filter more often. In our house, our filter will last about a year. Okay, so we've got a gas furnace, we've got a heat pump, we've got a big thick filter, but we literally have no construction, there's no farms, there's nothing like
With
that
lots
around.
of trees also
We
to
do.
filter out the air.
Yes, and so our system may not run as much as another system anyway because of the shade that is provided in the summer and things like that. And so, a filter, in one house may be very different than another house. So if you have a friend that's like, oh, you shouldn't have to change that filter, but, once every 6 months, you may just have very different circumstances than what that person does.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Because I lived in a construction field, no trees area, and I had to change my 1-inch filter every 2 weeks.
Okay, that's a
So,
lot. So do it.
It's
do it.
totally different depending on where you live, your house, and all that stuff. So,
Big parking
Okay.
lot too.
yes.
It's a big parking lot.
Yeah. All right. So, do you guys have anything to add? Any other tips to give as far as air handlers, heat pumps go? Anything like that?
Not that I can think of.
I guess when it's super cold, don't be scared when you see auxiliary heat hit.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
got to come on.
It's got to come on, or else you guys are going to be really cold.
Yeah. It has to come on. That's how it's designed to work, unfortunately. And, the reason, just put this out there too, the reason that all homes don't have gas heating is because of the initial expense or investment up front to bring gas to home. So if you have a new neighborhood that's being built and there's not gas that's ran out there, a lot of times it's going to be all electric because of that initial cost and expense of bringing gas to those neighborhoods and those homes. So, you could easily look at whole areas of Indianapolis or surrounding areas and there's no gas anywhere. That's why. I remembered what I wanted to ask, and I know that it's kind of a long video, but this is important. So, Mark, we talk about efficiencies on heat pumps, and so we might have a 13 SEER, 14 SEER, all the way up to 25 SEER. When do those efficiencies really matter?
The efficiency, the SEER rating is actually based on the cooling.
Okay.
You have an EER, that's an energy efficiency rating that you can look at, and you also have an HSPF, which is a heating season performance factor. Whenever we sell these systems, I like to let people know that the SEER is this, the EAR is this, and the HSPF is this, because based on your HSPF is your efficiency in heat. The SEER is cooling.
Okay.
So if you weren't sure about that, and if you're looking for systems now and the provider doesn't provide you with the HSPF with a heat pump, you need to ask them about it.
Okay.
Because that's the efficiency in heating. SEER is the efficiency in cooling.
And SEER is what we hear most often because that's what air
Right.
conditioners are rated in too. And so you hear about SEER ratings all the time, but heat pumps, they're just a different monster because
Right.
they heat as well. So make sure you have that information because otherwise you're going to get that efficiency really only in the summer in those hot months, and you may not be getting what you think you were getting or you were supposed to be getting in those heating months. So.
Right.
Okay, well, I hope we've given you some great information. If you have any questions, of course, reach out to us. We're happy to answer those. Otherwise, have a great week, and we will see you next time on HVAC Talk. Let's be real.